The staff turnover at GB News is absurd. I was constantly provoked for months and months and months. It then got to a situation where it just became really, really toxic.
So, Liam Halligan, we were there on the first night of GB News together. And let's be honest about it, probably we had some degree of very mild PTSD for a number of weeks and months after, because GB News wasn't like a normal media startup, right? Nothing worked. And I remember those hilarious early clips, Liam, of yourself and Gloria Di Piero trying to present as like there were hammers in the background and the wrong clips would come on. I know for myself, Liam, like sometimes like I would think that the camera was about to show me and it would like be zooming all around the studio. I mean, it was mad, right? It was mad. But we really fundamentally believed in this mission, Liam, and you in particular, having worked for some of the, I would argue, left-wing mainstream media equivalents like Channel 4 News, we understood why it was so important for there to be plurality within the broadcasting ecosystem in the United Kingdom. But it hasn't been an easy ride, Liam, and there was absolute outrage when your departure from the channel was announced. Can you explain what happened and why you left?
Well, just thinking back to the launch in June 2021, it was a magical time, really. There were some really, really good people at the beginning of GB News, really seasoned broadcasters. Just to next to me there, you got Simon McCoy, one of the most seasoned BBC presenters, a really smart, clever journalist. You got Colin Brazier
Colin
there,
Brazier,
Sky.
legend.
You got Kirsty Gallagher. You've got really good people. Gloria De Piero, Labour MP back in the day, but also before that, the political editor of GMTV, my co-host. And I really believed in GB News. I joined GB News because Andrew Neil and John McAndrew, who had previously been a very, very senior guy at Sky, asked me to join GB News, and because some really good people were involved in it, and because you kindly mentioned that back in the day I worked at Channel 4 News, but I would say in the late 90s, early 2000s, when I was at Channel 4 News, it was a lot more pluralist than it is now. You could have a really good sort of cross-party conversation on Channel 4 News, even within the newsroom. I think Channel 4 News, though I have tremendous affection for ITN that makes Channel 4 News, and indeed for many old friends at Channel 4 News, now has sort of just disappeared down a sort of wormhole of metropolitan opinions, which is a shame because it's there's some really smart people work there, both in front of and behind the camera, and they're really good at what they do. So when GB News came along, I really put my back into it. I made major changes in my life in order to be part of it, and I worked really, really hard at it, as did you, Dan. And firstly, I was teamed up with Gloria, and we're really good friends. We're in many ways we're from different parts of the political spectrum, if you like. But we've always got on very well. We've known each other a long time. We were both young political reporters together. Me at the FT, her, as I said, at GMTV, and we're actually from very similar backgrounds. We're both people from working class backgrounds, the first people in our families to go to university. Albeit I was brought up in sort of Irish northwest London, and she was brought up proudly in Bradford. And I thought Gloria and I had a really good show going. Obviously, it was completely chaotic. The poor people in the gallery in your ear when you're on telly. Oh, there was an interview, but now there isn't because the system, the electronics have made the guest disappear. Fill for 10 minutes, Well, Dan, because you've done it yourself. When you're looking down a camera for 10 minutes and you've got nothing to go to, no interviews, no pictures, no graphs, nothing. It's just you and your co-presenter, 10 minutes, right? You learn who can broadcast and who can't broadcast, right?
Big
And
time.
some of us proved that we are actually really good broadcasters.
It was sink or swim.
And then other people who were, very established broadcasters showed that they weren't actually any good broadcasting when they didn't have a welter of producers backing them up and lots of stuff in the background that you could cut to when the heat of the camera was on them. So I then started a show on GB News called On the Money, which was actually very, very popular. My inbox went crazy. My social media went crazy. I've been on telly and in the papers for many years, and I've never been stopped on the street or by cabbies the way I was when I did On the Money. It had a big impact. I think GB News needed, something to do with economics and sort of cost of living, pocketbook issues in the middle of the day. The BBC used to have a show called Working Lunch, which some executives got rid of. Mainstream broadcasters have never really understood business and economics because far too many mainstream broadcast executives are from wealthy backgrounds that, they're not from small business backgrounds like me or you, Dan, sort of lower middle class, blue collar backgrounds. People are really intensely interested in money, business, and financial issues, particularly in recent years. And On the Money got really good guests, and we made really big macroeconomic calls. We had a really good coterie of people who were coming on the show a lot. People in the city were talking about the show. A lot of GB News viewers were talking about the show. A lot of other broadcast executives were trying to get me to leave and do something similar on their channels, which I didn't do out of loyalty for GB News. But then the day of its 1 year anniversary, On the Money was scrapped, and I wasn't even allowed to go on and sort of, explain or do, you know, say anything to the viewers. It just disappeared, and that was not my choice. That was not my choice. As far as I was concerned, the show was never properly promoted. The show was always starved of resources. The show only ever had, for the most of its time, one producer for an hour of television, 5 days a week. Very talented producer. She was and is. For a bit of time, it had two producers. Most of the time, it had one producer, and then it was scrapped completely. That was not my choice. I think that the channel boss class wanted me to go off in a huff, but I didn't. I stuck around, and I put my back into appearing on GB News pretty much at the whim of the producers, the program editors throughout the day. And there were many, many times in the time after On the Money was scrapped where I basically kept the channel on air. They had nothing else to go to, so they'd literally throw me in a studio, and I could talk about various business and economic issues. So look, I didn't choose to leave GB News. For a long time, I didn't say that,
Mm.
but it is actually what happened. I didn't choose to leave GB News. It was GB News's choice. The boss of GB News in particular. And yet, when I did leave, there was a sort of media explosion, a social media explosion. It was trending on X. Why has this guy left GB News when he's one of the best things on GB News? So
Yeah, I
if you want
mean,
to know why I left, you'd have to ask the CEO of GB News.
and no one could understand it
No.
because it was at a time when GB News claimed to be moving away from maybe more of the firebrands on the station,
Yeah.
right? After my departure, Lawrence Fox's
Yeah.
department, Calvin Robinson's departure, Mark Stein's departure.
And
And
there's me, a bloke who's worked for the Economist and the
well,
FT.
exactly, they
He's been
said
an
they wanted to
economist
do
at the
real
International
news.
Monetary Fund.
Yeah,
I can mix it with the best tabloid journalists, Dan, as you know, but I'm also an extremely well-respected broadsheet
big time.
specialist journalist, whether it's finance, business, politics. I've been political correspondent for the Financial Times. I've been a foreign correspondent for The Economist. A lot of people told me that I gave GB News cachet. I gave GB News a sense that this is serious journalism. I mean, look, when I was removed from GB News, right? A bunch of MPs came to me from across the parties, and they said to me, do you want us to do an EDM? Right? An EDM is an early day motion. It's when loads of it's like parliamentary graffiti, when a load of journalists, MPs sign something, in Parliament, and it gets reported. And I asked them not to because I just didn't want to cause too much trouble. To be honest with you, there are various other things going on in my personal life at the time that were very, very painful to me. Um, uh, and so I asked them not to do that. But there was a real kind of massive eyebrows raised across the broadcast industry. What are you doing if you're getting rid of Liam Halligan at a time when the cost of living crisis is like a major issue? Um, you know, I was being gotten rid of at GB News at the time the BBC was appointing a cost of living correspondent.
Totally. It was
Which didn't make any sense
no,
at all.
it didn't.
And
And
it was
but
completely,
unfortunately, and we probably do know what it's about. It's about money, because they want to staff this channel with very young and very cheap people. And don't get me wrong, some of these people are great, right? Some of them are great, young, talented people. But unfortunately, you can never replace that sort of experience, that type of worldview, the contacts that someone like you has. You cannot replace it. Now, Liam, there was reports surrounding the chief executive of GB News and the fact that a presenter may have had a bit of a newsroom bust up with him on their last day on air. Is that true?
no, there was no newsroom bust up. I was constantly provoked for months and months and months. But I remain completely dignified throughout. Ask any of the sort of TV producers, anyone behind the scenes. I was always really dignified and professional in the way I conducted myself, even though I was being very heavily provoked. And I'm not even sure it's about money because I think I was good value. I'm the guy. I'm the guy that got exclusive interviews with
I
chancellors, home
know.
secretaries, business secretaries. With all respect, I was better connected politically than anyone at GB News, as well as being,
Totally.
obviously out on my own when it came to economics and
So
business. And
what is it then? An ego? Is
that's
it an
true.
ego? Is it an ego
I
thing?
think I just think the CEO Angelo Frankopoulos, he just didn't like people being in the room who were obviously so much smarter than he is. He couldn't handle it,
Yeah, it's
and
interesting.
everyone in the newsroom knew it.
Yeah, Alex Phillips had said a very similar thing, and of course, she was dispatched of in a terrible, brutal manner. So was Colin Brazier, and I think what's
Oh, Colin Brazier, what a fantastic broadcaster!
big time and a
What a
huge loss.
fantastic
A huge loss.
broadcaster!
He when GB News hired him, I was like,
Oh,
this is incredible, and he's
yeah, this is
completely
incredible.
aligned to the mission of
Al
this
Stewart,
station.
Colin Brazier, Simon McCoy, Kirsty Gallagher. These are serious
Yeah,
presenters and
and none of them
broadcasters
there.
in their own right.
And I mean, you go on Question Time, Liam, and go totally viral, and everyone online
Oh,
is
I've
talking
been on
about
Question
you.
Time a dozen times, a dozen times.
I know, very, 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 very bizarre. And I guess that the last thing I would say about it, Liam, is that GB News tries to present itself as a family, and there's been a big sort of, they need money from their viewers, and one of the ways they get money from their viewers is presenting what they do and presenting their team as a family. And all I would say is that the way so many members of the family have been treated viciously, brutally, when, as you say, we gave up so much. We didn't need to be at GB News at the start. We gave that up because we believed in the mission. I'd just say it's not really the way that you treat members of your family, is it? But first, I never recommend anything unless I truly believe in it. And today I've got something that is really game-changing for you. Have you ever stopped to think about how crucial comfort is, especially down there? Well, let me tell you, today's Outspoken is proudly sponsored by Sheath Underwear, the revolutionary brand shaking up men's comfort across the globe. And here's what makes it even better. Sheath was founded by a US Army veteran, Robert Patton, while he was serving in Iraq back in 2007. So that's right, this isn't just any underwear brand. It was designed for the toughest conditions imaginable. Patton was battling relentless heat and discomfort in full combat gear, and he thought there has to be a better way. So he created it. And let's be honest, traditional underwear doesn't just cut it anymore. Sheath's innovative dual pouch design ensures your comfort all day long, keeping things separate, cool, and fresh. Imagine your essentials being comfortably cradled away from unwanted friction and heat. Trust me, it is genuinely transformative. Now, I've personally tested Sheath. I wear them at the gym, on long days at work, even just relaxing at home. I'm telling you, once you've experienced Sheath, there is simply no turning back. These underwear are stylish, they're supported, and they're really set up to deliver unmatched comfort. I guess I describe it when I'm talking to my mates like upgrading from economy to first class, but for your underwear. And right now I'm offering you an exclusive 20% discount at www.sheath.com. Sheath is spelled Sheath. So yes, that's 20% off your entire order when you use my special promo code Outspoken at checkout. So what are you waiting for? Sheath is the perfect present, by the way, if you're looking for your husband, your boyfriend, your son, your brother, your hard to buy for best mate. But here's the thing, ladies. On the website, you will see, look at that. There are female versions available too, so you can also buy for yourself. I should tell you as well, and you can see some of them in action here, Sheath, the first official underwear of the UFC. So click the link below or visit sheath.com, enter Outspoken at checkout. Make sure you remember to do that for your 20% discount. And then you can thank me later when you're feeling comfortable, confident, and ready to tackle anything your day throws at you. Sheath underwear, redefining comfort one pair at a time. But now, back to the show.
I used to be an asset manager, right? I used to be a professional investor, a financial investor. And one of the first things you look for at any company is obviously cash flow, but you also look at staff turnover. And if staff turnover is really high, it's not a good sign. And the staff turnover at GB News is absurd. Now, look, nothing I've said takes away from the fact that GB News is stuffed full of really good young people who've been given a start in television that they would never get a look in at the BBC or ITN or Channel 4 or probably even Sky. People from all parts of the country, from non-journalistic backgrounds. And I will always defend GB News because it has really replenished the gene pool of British television news. It's given a lot of people a start in British television news. They learn at GB News and then they go off to, the more mainstream broadcasters. And GB News has done a fantastic job. And the investors that have put money into GB News, need to be congratulated for, as I say, giving more people in the UK from different socioeconomic backgrounds a start in television news, and they will now stay in television news or what replaces television news, for the rest of their careers. And that's absolutely fantastic. And I'll never stop saying how good it was. And, the managers at GB News included, they did a really good job, if not with the actual launch itself, which was really chaotic, but just in terms of staff morale and engendering the idea of common purpose. We got through all that technological difficulty and the chaos of the launch because there was really good camaraderie, and that did come from the top at that point. Absolutely. And I wouldn't say anything against the management at that point, to be honest with you. But it then got to a situation where it just became really, really toxic. And I was very much a sort of figurehead in the newsroom, somebody who was, a flag bearer for, decent, more pluralistic journalism, giving everyone a fair crack of the whip. Maybe, I'm a broadsheet journalist, but with a sort of tabloid heart, as you know. And, you don't do as much telly as I've done if you're just a broadsheet journalist, and you don't write in the papers that I often write in, as well as the Telegraph, if you're only a broadsheet journalist. And I felt a real connection with a lot of GB News viewers, and they felt a connection with me because they could sense, oh, this is a bloke who's done pretty well in life, but basically he's a working class kid, right? Who totally. This is the background he comes from. I've got all the credentials. I've been to
exactly what
universities, all the rest of it. But I'm a normal. I'm from a very ordinary, normal background, right? And GB News viewers sense that, and they sense that when I meet them, and they sense that in the way I am and the sort of attitudes I have and the opinions that I express. And so I did feel that GB News, having knocked about at the top of the British media industry for quite a long time, I really felt that GB News would be finally the proper home for me, where my sort of proletariat background would be a big advantage rather than something that I had to manage and sort of compensate for. I really thought that. But unfortunately, GB News ended up being run by somebody who doesn't really understand the UK, doesn't really know that much about the UK,
Totally.
if we're honest.
Totally.
And that is a problem.
Oh,
That
totally.
is a problem. Unless you really understand
Yeah.
the culture of a country, then you can't really run a big media
Yeah.
organization in the country,
Well,
especially not something as touchy-feely as daytime
but
telly.
also the way the media works too. I mean, God, I remember my crazy conversations when the person in question would say to me, Dad, I'm going to get Laura Koonsberg. We're going to get Laura Koonsberg. It's just like, what are you even thinking? What are you even thinking? Number one, why would you want Laura Koonsberg? But number two, she's not going to come. But look, the great positive out of all of this, Liam, is that there is a genuine media revolution coming. It's nothing to do with GB News. It's all about independence. We've seen what's happened in America.
But that would have happened anyway. This media revolution would have happened anyway, Dan, because it's technologically driven.
Totally.
The great tragedy of GB News, right? The great tragedy of GB News, even though there are lots of positives, which I've outlined and I'll always outline, the tragedy is that we need a kind of, broadly centre-right broadcasting platform in this mass broadcasting platform in this country. But I don't think GB News is it. And that is a shame because the original idea behind GB News, so lots and lots of regional coverage, lots and lots of pluralistic coverage, but with a kind of, proletariat angle to it, cost of living coverage, all the kind of stuff that we talked about in the early days of GB News. A lot of that has now just been thrown out. And it's not necessarily expensive to do the things that you need to do. I just think the vision has gone wrong. And that, to me, is a tragedy.
Totally. But as I say, because of this, and I totally agree, by the way, it's nothing to do with GB News, it's to do with technology. Actually, we're now in an era, Liam, where people want to engage with individuals, not with organizations. And it's something that I've actually found massively liberating since my exit.
And chapeau to you. You've really turned your life around. I know you were in a really bad way, if I can say so personally. You've about it yourself.
I remember seeing you
and people like me
months,
who know you behind the scenes knew that, and yet you've turned it around. You've built this platform, and fair play, and others are doing the same. I do wonder. There's going to be a shakedown, right?
Yes.
There's lots of people starting things like you've started. I'm obviously starting one myself now. There's going to be a shakedown, and only the really strong broadcasters
who have authenticity. Look, the key thing is authenticity.
It doesn't mean that they're the best known people now. No. People will come from nowhere that would never have got a platform, and the technological platforms allow them to do that. I just hope that the punters can sort of keep up, because the punters are just used to turning on the telly in the corner. Are they going to be navigating laptops? I mean, my mum can't do that.
Well, do you know what?
Right?
I mean, I've got people who are now watching on YouTube, Liam, in their 80s and 90s. So I think it is changing. And actually, I want to talk about when the facts change, because this is your independent platform. You gave me the courtesy, and we can have a little look actually of a sneak peek of your first interview, which is absolutely fascinating, beautifully produced. People can subscribe to When the Facts Change on YouTube right now, but effectively, if you want to watch the entire thing, it's best to sign up on Substack, right? Which is this brilliant free speech platform. I'm subscribed to When the Facts Change. And I think what's really important for folk to know is that with Substack, it is totally focused on free speech, and it gives the power to the journalist or the provider of the content, which is one of the reasons it's so important.
That's right. The little clip you saw there, that's an interview I did with a guy called Mike Calvey. Mike Calvey was by far and away the most successful Western investor in post-communist Russia. He lived in Russia from the early 90s for 25 years. I was a foreign correspondent in Russia. I knew him well. Um, and Mike ended up in prison after a business dispute went wrong. He was then eventually released, and he's written a book called Odyssey Moscow about his experience in post-communist Russia. But Substack isn't just a video platform; it's more of a writing platform, really. And what I do on When the Facts Change is every couple of days I do a little post about things I'm thinking about, and you can subscribe. Now, you don't have to pay to subscribe, certainly not at the beginning. You can just subscribe. You can see that entire interview with Mike Calvey. It's an hour long. You just go on When the Facts Change, Substack. You can Google that, and you'll easily find it. It's very, very easy for readers and viewers to follow. And what I do, like a lot of people, is I put the early part of my interview on YouTube and then try and draw people over to Substack. But look, it's taken me a while to get to this point, Dan. Um, I started doing a podcast series off my own back in 2013, right, 2014, just when smartphones were coming out. And in the end, I ended up doing other things. A lot of people have been telling me to do independent media for a long time. And now I'm finally doing it. It doesn't mean I'm going to stop doing my Telegraph column. I've been doing that for 25 years. I'm going to carry on doing that. That's still a big part of my life. And I'll end up making TV documentaries like I always have done. I'm sure none of that will change. But what Substack does is I'm trying to build a platform that eventually people will subscribe to for money, a few quid a month or whatever it is. And that will help give me the power to write what I want when I want, and also to make the television that I want to. If I can get enough subscribers on Substack, that means I can make films like the Channel 4 News documentaries I used to make on financial scandals and infrastructure that's gone wrong and pensions collapsing and all kinds of things. It means I'll be able to, um, you know, do investigative journalism, because there's very little money for investigative journalism, particularly when it comes to economics and business in television these days. I've tried for the last 20 or 30 years to do as much economics and business journalism as I can on television alongside my newspaper columns. And you know what, Dan? I've concluded, and I conclude this with regret, mainstream television and radio, they don't care about economics and business, right? Because they think the punters are too thick to understand economics and business, right? Now, it's my experience, it's my experience, and I would say I've demonstrated over many years that if you know what you're talking about and you speak clearly and you don't talk down to people and you decipher all the crazy terms that are used to deliberately confuse people, not only are punters interested in economics and business, they really want to know about economics and business. They really want to know about money. Money, sport, sex, right? These are the things that make the world go round, that people are really interested in. And yet
Totally true.
the media for my whole adult life have really underplayed economics and business. Going back to when I was a newspaper boy, right? I used to read the great newspaper columnists in the business sections, literally when I was 10, 11 years old, in the Sunday Times, in the Sunday Telegraph, the Observer, the Times. And they used to write these brilliant economics columns. It's why I ended up doing A-level economics. It's why when I was the first person in my family to go to university, I did economics rather than do English literature, which all my teachers wanted me to do because they thought I was a good writer. Because it really grabbed me, because I grew up in an environment, an Irish dad running a tiny little business off the back of a fag packet at the kitchen table. And I knew that economics, where the economy was, where inflation was, it really made a huge difference to the mood in my house, right? And whether or not we were going to go on holiday. We only ever went on holiday to Ireland, of course, like all London Irish families. Yeah, it really made a difference.
Totally.
And so when I got into the mainstream media, particularly mainstream broadcasting, and I sensed the sort of disdainful attitude
Hmm.
of people working in the newsroom towards economics and business. I couldn't believe it, how out of touch they were. And then I realized it was because most of them had trust funds, so they didn't care. Right? They didn't care about economics
Totally
and
didn't
business.
have to look at the price of anything. Totally.
Because the talk about money was crude, and it was business and commerce and trade. Oh, we don't talk about that. Can't we talk about the arts? Now, I like the arts. I like going to the theatre. I like writing, all the rest of it. But I also really understand that I know when I go into pubs, I'm so often, someone comes up to me and they don't want to fight. Well, sometimes they want to fight. They come up to me and say, Liam, what's going to happen to interest rates? Liam, what's going to
Yes.
happen to the dollar? Liam, I'm going on a holiday. When should I change my money? I mean, just basic stuff. Basic stuff. Now,
Which
Martin
impacts
Lewis
our
has done a
life.
great job. Martin Lewis has done a great job, right? ITV sort of get it, but he's a one off. We need a lot more economics and business across the media. And in my own little way, I'll be doing politics on When the Facts Change. I'll be doing foreign policy stuff on When the Facts Change as well, because that's all part of me as well. But the thrust of it will be economics and business, mainly the UK, the world too, because the UK is a big trading nation, and when America sneezes, we catch a cold, and all the rest of it. Obviously, we still do a huge amount of trade with continental Europe, but the thrust of it will be UK economics and business. So if people want to subscribe for free at first, and just see how you like it.
Well, Liam, we're getting so much
Where
feedback
we go from
actually
there.
on our live chat. Jan Law has said we'll subscribe after this. Timo UK has said Liam Halligan was brilliant on GB News, seemed to be the only one with a grasp on economics and what will happen in the future. And Julie Cole says, Dan, please have this lovely gentleman Liam back on again. And I would absolutely love to. Liam, so great to have you. liamhalligan.substack.com if you actually want to type the address in, or you can just search for When the Facts Change Substack, or on YouTube, When the Facts Change. It's a bit harder to search for on YouTube, so I'll put the link in the description when we put this video up. So, Liam Halligan, such a pleasure to have you today.
Thanks,
Fountain of
Dan, and
knowledge.
congratulations on
Absolutely
everything
loved
you've
it.
been doing with your channel. You've rebuilt yourself.
Thank you.
You're irrepressible. Fair play to you.
Thank you so much, Liam. Hope to see you very soon. Thank you indeed. Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source, and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.